I stood on the porch with a tray of cinnamon rolls still warm from the oven, my scarf dusted in snow, and my heart full of tentative hope. The house was glowing with twinkling lights, wreaths in every window, the sound of distant laughter echoing inside. I hadn't spent a real holiday with my daughter in nearly 3 years, not since she'd married Nathan, but this year I'd been invited. Or so I thought. The door opened, and there he was. Nathan. Always impeccably dressed, always composed. Not a hair out of place. His smile was tight, almost rehearsed. "Marilyn," he said. Voice dipped in politeness but cold beneath the surface. "We weren't expecting you until tomorrow." "That's not what Emma said," I replied, trying to keep the chill in my bones from crawling into my voice. "She told me to come today. I thought I'd help with the cooking, maybe set the table." He didn't step aside to let me in. I glanced past him into the foyer. Emma was nowhere in sight. A suitcase sat near the coat rack. Mine. She must have had Nathan bring it in earlier. There was a pause, a subtle but deliberate pause, before he spoke again. "I think there's been a bit of a misunderstanding," he said. "Emma isn't feeling great. She needed some rest. We weren't expecting company today." I tried to smile through the confusion. "She was fine on the phone. We talked 2 days ago." He ignored that. "It's not personal," he added quickly, like he was preemptively cutting off a protest I hadn't made yet. "It's just, we need a little privacy this year. Space. Time to ourselves." I blinked. My hands were starting to ache from the cold, but I didn't want to move. I didn't understand. "You invited me," I said softly. "Emma did. I'm not imagining that." Nathan sighed, his expression tight. "She had good intentions. But we're under a lot of pressure right now. And actually, there was something else we were hoping to talk to you about. Something important." My throat tightened. He leaned one arm casually against the doorframe, voice lowering. "We're trying to expand the business. We've got an opportunity. An incredible one. But we need a loan to make it happen. And the bank, well, they'd approve it with a cosigner. Someone with reliable income, strong credit, someone like you." The silence that followed was deafening. "That's why you invited me?" I asked. "To cosign a loan?" He held up his hands, smiling as if that would soften the blow. Emma didn't want to ask. She thought it would be uncomfortable. "But I told her you'd understand." I stared at him. My daughter's face flickered in my memory, laughing in her little footy pajamas when she was 7, holding my hand when she cried after college heartbreaks, calling me Mama with that voice that used to need me. Now, she was nowhere to be found. And her husband was trying to buy me off with sentiment and cinnamon rolls. "I didn't come here to sign papers, Nathan," I said quietly. "I came because it's Christmas. Because I thought Emma wanted me here." "She does," he said too quickly. She's overwhelmed. The holidays are stressful." He gave me that same perfect smile. "We'll see you tomorrow, all right? I'll tell her you stopped by." He was already closing the door. I stood there a moment longer, stunned. I hadn't even seen her. No hug. No hello. Just that chilling word. Co-signer. And a closed door behind it. The snow had started to fall again as I turned back to my car, each flake like a whisper telling me something was off. Something was very, very wrong. Emma would never have sent me away. Not like this. Not unless someone had made her. The next morning, I stared at the untouched cinnamon rolls on my kitchen counter, the glaze now congealed and sad under the flickering light of my range hood. I hadn't slept, not really. Just tossed and turned, replaying Nathan's voice in my head like a needle stuck on a warped record. "We need a cosigner. It's not personal. We need privacy." He had smiled when he said it. That's what unnerved me the most. He smiled while asking me to step out of my daughter's life and into his financial scheme. And Emma, my sweet, stubborn Emma, hadn't even come to the door. Something wasn't right, and I couldn't shake it. By mid-morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table with my laptop, the mug of coffee beside me gone cold. I typed Nathan Grayson business loan into the search bar and hit enter. What popped up was vague at best. some generic listings for an interior design startup he claimed to co-own, a defunct-looking website with stock photos, and a bland LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in over a year. Curious, I dug deeper. I pulled the business license records for the county. No record under Nathan Grayson, no LLC under the company name he'd mentioned at Thanksgiving. That's when my stomach dropped. Had he lied about owning a business? I dug further. Property records, court documents, obituaries, marriage announcements, anything I could find. After an hour, I had a sticky note full of aliases. Well, name variations, Nathaniel Gray, N.G. Raisin. One of them led me to a sealed small claims court record in a nearby town. Another pointed toward a short-lived business in his name that had been dissolved 2 years ago after a creditor filed suit. But one particular hit made my blood run cold. A bankruptcy filing, filed under Nathan G. Ray 5 years ago, listed as self-employed. No assets. Dozens of unpaid debts. So why was he now living in a spacious 2-story home with my daughter, driving a Mercedes and asking me to put my name on another loan? I opened the financial app on my phone and stared at my modest savings account. I'd never been rich, but I'd always been careful. After my divorce, I'd worked hard to rebuild credit, pay off the house, and save enough to retire without depending on anyone. Not even Emma. If I signed anything for him, I could lose everything I'd built. I picked up the phone and dialed Emma. Straight to voicemail. Again. And again. By the third attempt, I left a message. Sweetheart, I just wanted to talk. I'm not angry. I have some questions. About Nathan. About the loan. Can we meet for coffee? Please call me. I hung up, already knowing she wouldn't call back. Then, a sudden thought. I opened my email and searched for any recent communication from Emma about the holidays. There was one from 2 weeks ago, sent from her personal address, confirming the date and asking if I could bring my apple stuffing. But the email from the day before Christmas? The one saying they were so excited to see me tomorrow? It was sent from a different address. Similar name. But the domain was slightly off. A burner email. I read the message again, just confirming we'll see you tomorrow, not today. Sorry for the mix-up. I hadn't noticed it in the moment, but now the subtle oddness sent a chill down my spine. Nathan didn't want me there, not just for Christmas Day. At all. And he'd gone as far as to send a fake email, pretending to be my daughter, to stop me from showing up early. Or perhaps from showing up before... What? Before whatever he was planning had finished, I felt suddenly nauseous. This wasn't just about a loan. This was manipulation. Erasure. He was isolating Emma from me and carefully controlling every move, down to which day I was allowed to visit. I stared at the burner email, dread sinking deeper. I didn't know what Nathan was hiding yet, but I knew this much. He hadn't just pushed me away. He was building a wall around my daughter. And if I didn't act soon, I might never reach her again. The next day, I drove to the public library, the one across town where they still kept physical archives and had a reference desk staffed by people who knew how to dig. I didn't trust my home internet search to turn up the kind of truth I needed. Online, people could manufacture lives out of thin air. I needed real paper. Records that couldn't be photoshopped or rewritten. I approached the woman behind the counter, a silver-haired librarian with a kind face and tired eyes. I'm trying to find some background information, I said cautiously, on someone I believe may have changed their name, or hidden parts of their history. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Start with what you have. Nathan Grayson, I said, born allegedly in 1986, claims to have grown up in Vermont, but I've never met his family. No wedding announcement in any newspaper. No childhood photos in Emma's home, just holes. The woman nodded slowly. And you think he's hiding something? I looked her dead in the eye. I know he is. She directed me to a terminal connected to local and regional newspaper archives, genealogy tools, and a criminal court database. I typed Nathan Grayson into the search bar, then Nathaniel Grayson, then N. Grayson. A few vague references came up: a fundraiser for his supposed business that had abruptly been canceled, a name listed on a party attendance sheet for a charity gala, but nothing consistent, nothing verifiable. I tried cross-referencing addresses. Every rental or property linked to him had been short-term, 6 months here, 8 months there, often in different states. There was no evidence of family, no school records, no social media accounts older than 2 years. He was like smoke. He existed, but only in the periphery, just enough to seem real if you didn't look too hard. I paused. Most people had digital footprints they couldn't erase: embarrassing college photos, addresses tied to their parents, old blog posts from forgotten platforms. But Nathan? It was as if he'd stepped onto the earth fully formed at age 30. And then, one flicker of hope: a digital yearbook from a small town in Pennsylvania, class of 2003. The face caught my eye. Slightly younger, the hair curlier, but the smirk was unmistakable. Nate Rayburn. I clicked into the page. Under his name: debate team, theater club, expelled senior year, reinstated after disciplinary review. Expelled? There it was again, a smudge in the middle of the story. I copied the name down and searched it through court records. And there it was, Nathaniel G. Rayburn, charged in 2007 with identity fraud and check forgery in another state. Charges dropped due to lack of evidence, but the details matched. Same date of birth, same birth town. He'd just dropped the burn, cleaned up the records, and started over as Grayson. I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding. The man married to my daughter had a criminal past, not just financial trouble, a criminal past involving deception, manipulation, and fake identities. How much did Emma know? Had he confessed his youthful mistakes, framing it as a misunderstanding from his wild years? Or had he hidden everything behind charm, ambition, and a suit that fit a little too perfectly? A cold thought slid through me. What if she didn't even know his real name? I printed everything. Every scrap of paper, every snippet of the yearbook, every court docket I could legally request. I placed them into a folder and stared at it for a long moment. It felt like holding a bomb. Because if I handed this to Emma, it could blow everything apart. But not handing it to her? That might be worse. As I walked out into the gray afternoon light, snow drifting silently through the air like ashes, I realized something with terrifying clarity. Nathan hadn't just erased his past to protect himself. He'd done it to blend in, to seduce his way into someone else's future, my daughter's. And now I had proof that the man she married was a fiction. I drove straight to Emma's house. I didn't call ahead. I didn't want to give Nathan the chance to intercept me again. I needed to see my daughter face to face. I needed to look into her eyes and figure out how much of this deception she'd unknowingly built her life around. The house was quiet when I pulled into the driveway. No lights in the front windows. The festive wreath now looked slightly askew, like someone had brushed against it in haste. The sense of warmth and invitation I'd once felt seeing this house was gone, replaced with an eerie stillness. I hesitated before knocking. It was Emma who opened the door. Her hair was pulled into a loose bun. She looked tired, more than tired really, fragile, like a soap bubble caught mid-air, one wrong word away from bursting. "Mom?" She blinked, clearly surprised. "Is everything okay?" I swallowed hard. "Can I come in?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder into the house, as though weighing whether Nathan was nearby. Then, with a quick nod, she stepped aside. "Nathan went to the hardware store. You can stay a few minutes." I entered cautiously, clutching the folder of documents under my coat like a weapon I wasn't sure I'd use. The living room looked staged. Every pillow fluffed, every surface sparkling, a crackling fireplace video looping on the TV. But there was no scent of pine or cinnamon, no evidence of a tree or laughter or joy, just silence. Manufactured peace. "Emma," I began gently, watching her closely. Why didn't you come to the door on Christmas Eve?" She flinched slightly. "I wasn't feeling well. Nathan said he told you." "He did, but you didn't text, didn't call, and then the email I got, it wasn't from your address, it was a fake." Her face paled, eyes darting toward the hallway. I pressed on. "Emma, I need you to be honest with me. Did you ask me not to come, or did Nathan tell you I wasn't welcome?" She looked down at her hands, twisting a ring around her finger. "He just thought it'd be better if we had space. I didn't want to fight about it." "Emma," I said more firmly now, "I know about the loan, and I know he asked you to get me to co-sign." She closed her eyes. "That's not what Christmas is for," I added quietly, "and it's not why I came. But what matters now is this. Do you know who Nathan really is?" Her eyes snapped open. "I mean his real name," I said, pulling the folder from beneath my coat. "His past, his records." She stepped back. No, what are you doing?" "I need you to look at something." "I don't want to," she whispered, almost childlike. "Emma," I said gently, "you have to." I placed the folder on the coffee table and opened it slowly. Newspaper clippings, a scan of a yearbook photo, the bankruptcy filing, the criminal record. Each piece laid down like a jigsaw puzzle, slowly revealing a man she didn't know. Emma stared, frozen. Finally she spoke, voice barely audible. "He told me his father was abusive, that he changed his name to escape, that he had to file bankruptcy after being taken advantage of in his 20s. "Sweetheart," I reached for her hand, "those aren't half-truths, they're rehearsed lies. He's been doing this for years. He finds people who believe in him, who'll trust him with money, and he drains them." She yanked her hand away. "You don't know that, you hate him. You've never trusted anyone I've loved." "I trusted you," I said softly, "enough to walk away when he told me I wasn't welcome. But now I see, he's isolating you. That's what men like him do. He's slowly cutting you off from anyone who might see through him." Emma covered her mouth with her hand. Her breathing grew shallow. I could see the cracks forming, the years of blind faith colliding with the sickening weight of evidence. "He said you'd try to turn me against him," she murmured. "That you'd invent reasons to destroy our marriage," I stood. "This isn't about your marriage, this is about your safety, your finances, your future." And then the sound of tires on gravel. Nathan was home. Emma turned toward the door like a cornered animal, panic flooding her face. "Hide it," she whispered. "Please. He can't see that folder. Not yet." I stuffed the papers back inside and slipped it under my coat again. Emma met my gaze, eyes brimming with tears. "Just give me time." As Nathan's key turned in the lock, she mouthed one more word. "Please." Nathan walked in carrying a bag of light bulbs and a smug grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. He took one look at me standing in the living room and hesitated, just a beat, but that beat was enough. He hadn't expected me here. He didn't like surprises. "Well," he said smoothly, "this is a surprise." I smiled tightly. "Emma invited me. We were just catching up." His gaze flicked to her, then back to me, and he set the bag down with exaggerated calm. "How nice. Though you could have called first." "I could have," I replied. "But some things are better said face to face." He offered a thin chuckle and slung his arm around Emma's shoulder. "Well, you picked the perfect time. We were just about to make dinner. You'll stay, won't you?" Emma froze. I could see the pleading in her eyes again. "Stay. Watch. See for yourself." So I nodded. "Of course, I'd love to." Nathan busied himself in the kitchen, all charming domesticity, pouring wine, chopping vegetables, humming along to some mellow jazz he turned on like background music for a show. It was all too rehearsed. The perfect husband, the doting host. But I watched closely. His movements were too smooth, like someone performing for an audience rather than living a moment. Emma barely spoke. She floated between setting the table and stirring a pot, eyes vacant, smile brittle. She was playing a part too, but not the same one Nathan was. Hers was a woman trying to keep the peace in a house built on eggshells. "So," Nathan said, placing a roasted chicken on the table, "what brings you by so late in the season, regretting skipping out on Christmas?" I sipped the wine he poured me without asking. "Just needed to see Emma. Mother-daughter time, you understand." "Of course," he said, smiling too widely. "We've missed you, haven't we, babe?" Emma nodded. "Yeah, missed you." The lie hung in the air like smoke. We sat talked about nothing. Weather. Holiday plans. Nathan's supposed business expansion. He spun stories about a new investor, about property deals I knew were fake, about hiring staff for a design firm that didn't exist. And Emma just nodded, eyes fixed on her plate. Finally, I said, "Sounds like you two are really building something special. You must have everything figured out now, huh?" Nathan leaned back, wine glass in hand. "Well, when you've got ambition and a supportive partner, there's nothing you can't do." "Is that why you needed a co-signer?" He froze. The smile cracked. Emma's fork dropped to her plate with a soft clink. Nathan's voice was silk with a thread of steel. "We talked about that already. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. I thought we were past it. I just find it odd," I continued, calm as still water, "that someone with so many investments needs someone else's name on a loan. Seems like that kind of empire should stand on its own." Emma stood abruptly. "I'll get dessert." Nathan didn't take his eyes off me. "What are you trying to say?" "That your story doesn't add up," I said quietly. "And you know it." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "You're not just meddling, you're trespassing." I met his gaze. "You invited me to dinner, remember?" The room went silent. Then Emma returned with a pie, store-bought, its plastic wrap hastily removed, and she placed it between us like a peace offering. Her hands trembled. "Maybe we should call it a night," she said, voice too bright. "It's been a long day." I stood. "You're right, it has." Nathan's jaw was tight, but he kept his tone even. "Next time, just let us know before dropping by. We value boundaries in this house." I walked to the door, then turned back. "Boundaries are one thing," I said, loud enough for Emma to hear. "But isolation? That's something else. And I won't let my daughter disappear behind closed doors." Emma's eyes flickered toward me. Something in her face cracked. Pain, guilt, fear. Maybe all three. Nathan, still smiling, closed the door behind me with a soft click. As I walked to my car, I realized the game had changed. That dinner wasn't hospitality. It was a performance. A trap meant to warn me off. He wanted me to know that Emma was his now. His project. His prize. But what he didn't know was that I'd already seen behind the curtain. And I wasn't going anywhere. The next morning, I called my bank. It wasn't paranoia, it was instinct. After everything I'd uncovered about Nathan, after that chilling dinner where he'd tried to disarm me with fake smiles and veiled threats, something inside me had shifted. I didn't feel safe. Not financially, not emotionally, not even in the privacy of my own life. So I asked for a routine security review of my accounts. What I got was anything but routine. "Ma'am?" the representative said after a long pause, her voice tightening slightly. "I'm seeing an authorization from last week for a joint access request." I sat up straighter. "Joint access? Yes. To your savings account ending in 8,417. It was approved online, but the name listed, well, it's not yours." "Who was it?" There was a brief pause as she verified. "Nathan Grayson." My mouth went dry. I hadn't given him access. I hadn't even spoken to him since Christmas Eve, until that cursed dinner. And now he was linked to my finances? "I didn't authorize that," I said firmly. "That's fraud." "We'll flag it immediately and start an internal review," she said. "You'll receive documents to confirm your identity and revoke any unauthorized permissions." "I'm very sorry, ma'am." As I hung up, a chill settled into my bones. Nathan hadn't just targeted Emma, he'd targeted me. And not just emotionally or through manipulation, he'd gone after my bank account. He'd gone close enough to Emma to steal passwords, gain access to household devices, maybe even spy on my correspondence. And somehow, he was confident enough to think I wouldn't notice. But I had. And now he'd made a mistake. I opened my laptop and checked the shared cloud drive Emma had once invited me to for family photos. I hadn't looked at it in months. But something told me Nathan had been using that connection as a back door. Sure enough, there were new folders, labeled Receipts, Documents, and Taxes. I clicked through. Inside were PDFs of old tax forms, financial statements, my full name, my social security number, my signature lifted from a scanned lease agreement from 5 years ago. A template. He'd forged it. Nathan had everything he needed to impersonate me, and with access to Emma's devices, he could make it all look legitimate. Co-signer on a loan. Try full access to a retirement account. Try identity theft with my name, my credit, and my entire financial history. The knock at my front door startled me so badly I almost dropped the laptop. I peered through the peephole. Emma. Alone. I opened the door slowly. What's wrong? She stepped inside, breathless, eyes wide. He's gone. I blinked. What? He left. After you left dinner last night, he was furious, not yelling. He doesn't yell, but cold, icy. He told me I'd embarrassed him, that I'd ruined his trust, and then this morning, he was just gone. No note, no suitcase, just vanished. I led her inside and sat her down. Emma, I said carefully, you need to see something. She looked at me hollow. He emptied our joint account, the one I thought we were saving for a house. Every penny, gone. I opened the laptop and showed her what I'd found. Her hand flew to her mouth. No, this can't be. He forged my name, Emma. He accessed my accounts. He's been preparing for this. She stood and began pacing, panic overtaking her. How? How did I not see this? He showed me statements. He told me we were investing. He told you what you needed to hear, I said gently. That's what people like him do. Then her face crumpled. Oh my God, Mom, I think I'm pregnant. The room spun. I grabbed her hand. We'll handle this. No matter what happens, you're not alone. Not anymore. She nodded, tears spilling freely now. I feel like my whole life was fake. Like I married a ghost. You married a con artist, I said quietly, but you're still you, and we're going to get him. We both sat in silence for a moment, staring down at the screen. The weight of betrayal, the fear of what came next. And then I realized something that sent a new wave of dread through me. Nathan hadn't just disappeared, he'd planned this. This wasn't panic, it was execution, which meant he wasn't finished yet. We filed the police report that afternoon. The officer's eyes darkened as Emma recounted what had happened. Nathan's disappearance, the drained accounts, the forged co-signer documents, the access to my financial information. He nodded solemnly, scribbling into his notepad, but I could tell he'd heard versions of this story before. Men like Nathan didn't leave footprints. They slipped out of lives like shadows, leaving chaos and confusion in their wake. Do you have any idea where he might go? The officer asked. Emma shook her head, visibly shaken. He always said he didn't have a family, that he came from nothing. I believed him. I glanced at her. That was a lie, too. We left the station with little more than a case number and a warning. These cases are hard to prosecute if the spouse shared access willingly. Emma hadn't willingly given him access to everything, but she had trusted him. That was enough to complicate things legally. I drove her back to my house, her hands trembling in her lap the entire way. He said we were a team, she murmured. He said he'd never lie to me. I reached over and squeezed her fingers. He lied from the moment he said his name. That night, she slept in her old bedroom, the one I hadn't changed since she moved out. I sat up, combing through every email, every saved voicemail, every trace of Nathan's digital trail I could find. Most of it led nowhere. Burner emails, ghosted numbers, dead-end LLCs registered under fake names. But just before dawn, I found it. An email Emma had forwarded to me nearly a year ago, a receipt from a getaway weekend Nathan had planned as a surprise. The sender domain looked off, greenhollowlodge.net, but when I searched the lodge name, nothing came up. No listings, no address. I tried something else. I checked the website's registration. It was created using a privacy mask, but the email linked to the domain had been used elsewhere. Once, on a wedding website for someone named Jason Everett. The photo on the page was unmistakable. Nathan. Same eyes. Same dimples. Same smug, dashing grin. But in this timeline, he was Jason. A groom who'd married someone else just 4 years ago. Another woman. Another name. I clicked deeper. The wedding photos were still live. There were pictures of him and a blonde woman laughing by a lake, dancing under string lights, posing with family. One image in particular made my stomach flip, him holding her belly, clearly pregnant. The caption read, "Baby Everett arriving March 2021. I stared at the screen. A family. He'd had a whole other life before Emma. I printed every photo, every name, every location mentioned in the site's registry. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. My mind churned with questions, possibilities, the sick realization that we weren't even the first. That Emma wasn't the first. In the morning, I woke her gently and handed her the photos. She stared at them in silence for a long time. "He was married before," she whispered. "He told me he'd never been in love before me. He has a child, Emma." She blinked slowly, like her mind couldn't quite absorb it. "A baby?" "Not a baby anymore. That child's at least 3 by now." Emma stood and paced the room, her voice shaking. "What kind of man does this? Marries someone, has a kid, then walks away and does it again?" "A man who uses love like a business model," I said. "One woman for sympathy, one for funding, one for cover. It's not about relationships. It's about leverage." Emma stopped pacing. Her face hardened. "I want to find him," she said. "We will," I promised. "But we do this smart. We go through his past. Find the other wife. See if she knows where he went after her." Emma's shoulders squared for the first time in days. "If he has a child, I need to know what else he's hiding. I need to know what kind of man I brought into my life." I nodded. "And we'll find out. Together." We had a lead now. A name. A face. A crack in Nathan's polished armor. He hadn't vanished. Not really. He'd just moved on to his next target. But this time, he'd underestimated the 2 women he'd left behind. We found her in a modest ranch house outside Asheville, North Carolina. Her name was Lauren Everett, and the irony wasn't lost on me. How close it sounded to Lauren Everything, which, judging by her sad eyes and careful words, was exactly what she had once given to the man Emma had called husband. I hadn't told Emma much before the drive, just that I needed her with me, that we might be meeting someone important. When we pulled up to the house, a child's laughter echoed from the backyard, followed by a sharp bark from a golden retriever. For a moment, Emma didn't move. She sat with her hands clenched in her lap, staring out at the white picket fence like it was some kind of cruel joke. "You okay?" I asked gently. She nodded. I'm scared of what I'm about to see." I reached over and touched her shoulder. "Whatever it is, you don't have to face it alone." Lauren answered the door in jeans and a worn sweatshirt, her long hair pulled into a messy bun. She had that look in her eyes, guarded, tired, too young for that kind of emotional wear. The kind of look women have when they've had the ground ripped out from under them but are still standing because they have to. "Yes?" she asked, eyeing us warily. I stepped forward. "Are you Lauren Everett?" Her eyes narrowed. "Who's asking?" I hesitated, then simply said, We were married to the same man." She stared at me for a beat. Then her gaze flicked to Emma, and I watched her expression shift, from suspicion to understanding to exhausted recognition. She stepped aside. "Come in." The house smelled like cinnamon and crayons. A toddler's toys were scattered across the floor. On the mantel, a family photo sat in a frame. Nathan, Jason back then, grinning with an arm around Lauren, the other hand resting protectively on her pregnant belly. Emma flinched when she saw it. We sat at the kitchen table while Lauren made tea like she'd done this 100 times. When she finally sat across from us, she let out a long breath. "I always wondered when someone else would show up," she said quietly. "Part of me thought I was the only one." "He left you too?" Emma asked, her voice tight. Lauren nodded. "When our son was 8 months old. Claimed he had a job offer in Atlanta, said he'd be gone 2 weeks. He never came back." "He drained our accounts," I said. "Tried to forge documents in my name, took Emma's savings, manipulated her." Lauren let out a bitter laugh. "Sounds familiar." "You didn't press charges?" Emma asked. "I tried," Lauren said, "but legally it was complicated. He'd had his name on everything, joint access. I was young and in love. I thought we were building a life. Turns out I was building a target on my back." I leaned in. "Do you know his real name?" Lauren blinked. "You mean it's not Jason Everett?" We all stared at one another. "That's the name he gave me," she added, "but I've done my digging. After he vanished, I hired a private investigator." Emma straightened. "And?" Lauren reached for her purse and pulled out a folder. "He goes by at least 4 aliases. Jason Everett, Nathan Grayson, Oliver Penn, and once, Eric Dane. He's been married 3 times. You're the 4th, I guess?" Emma paled. Lauren continued. "Every time, it's the same pattern. Love bombs them, rushes into marriage, gains financial access, then disappears." She passed us a photo. It was Nathan, this time clean-shaven, in a tuxedo, arm around a brunette I didn't recognize. This was wife number 2, Melissa. The PI tracked her to Texas. She refused to speak to me. I sat back, overwhelmed by the sheer scope of it. 4 names, 4 lives, 4 women at least. Who knew how many victims hadn't figured it out yet? "And the child?" I asked gently. Lauren looked toward the hallway, where a small boy's voice was singing to the dog in the distance. "He never met his father. I don't know if that's a gift or a curse." Emma looked like she might cry. "I thought he loved me." Lauren's voice softened. "We all did." There was a long silence. Then Lauren looked at me. "If he contacted you again, would you tell me?" "In a heartbeat," I said. "I think he's planning something bigger this time," Emma added. "He's gotten better at covering his tracks, more sophisticated." Lauren nodded grimly. "Then he'll be back. Not to me, not to you, but somewhere new." I stood and offered Lauren my card. "If anything changes, if you hear from him, call me." As we walked back to the car, Emma whispered, "He didn't just break my heart. He erased my identity." I looked at her, fierce and proud. "Then it's time to take it back." We weren't victims anymore. We were survivors. And we were coming for him. We didn't wait for him to strike again. We decided to lure him out. "He's not gonna stay gone," I told Emma as we sat in my den late one night, the glow of my laptop casting shadows across her worried face. "He's arrogant. He thinks he's smarter than us. That means he'll get curious. He'll circle back. But we're going to make it easy for him." Emma looked up from the folder Lauren had given us. "You want to trap him?" I nodded. "Exactly." I'd already set up a dummy email account using the name Claire Dalton, an alias tied to a fabricated online profile we built together. Claire was wealthy, recently widowed, and thanks to a few carefully curated social media posts, she'd just inherited a large estate. It didn't take long before he took the bait. 1 week later, Claire received a message from a man named Oliver Penn. It was Nathan, his language as smooth as ever, laced with false humility and exaggerated interest. "Hello, Claire. I stumbled on your profile while researching investment groups. Your post about starting a charitable foundation really resonated. I lost someone recently, too. Grief is a strange kind of glue, isn't it?" Emma read the message aloud and scoffed. "He's recycling the same lines he used on me." "It's all muscle memory to him," I said. "This is just a performance." We spent days messaging back and forth. Claire played the part perfectly. Lonely, curious, a little vulnerable, but not so eager that she seemed desperate. Nathan bit harder each day. He offered to fly out for a private weekend, even sent photos. New haircut, new glasses, but the same cold, soulless eyes. Eventually, we suggested a meeting at a boutique hotel in Charleston. He agreed without hesitation. The trap was set. The morning of the meeting, I called in every favor I had left. A former colleague from the courthouse helped me secure legal documentation and a recorder. Emma and I contacted the authorities, not that they were thrilled. Without a clear confession or concrete proof of his fraud, they couldn't promise an arrest. But they agreed to keep eyes on the location. "He's slippery," the detective warned. "Make him nervous, he'll vanish. Again." Emma and I arrived at the hotel early. She was pale but determined, her hands shaking slightly as she applied makeup in the mirror. "You don't have to do this," I said gently. "Yes, I do," she replied. "He took everything from me. I need to look him in the eye when it ends." At noon sharp, Nathan walked into the hotel lobby. Even I had to admit, he looked impeccable. Tailored suit, expensive watch, that easy charm that hid the venom underneath. He scanned the room for Claire, but instead, he saw Emma. And then he saw me. He stopped mid-step. A flicker of something, surprise, then calculation, passed across his face. He tried to retreat, but two plainclothes officers flanked him from behind. "Sit down, Nathan," I said. He didn't. He turned to Emma. "Sweetheart, what is this?" Emma didn't flinch. "This is your reckoning." The officers gave him a choice: cooperate or come downtown. He sat. For 30 minutes, Emma laid out every detail: his lies, his fraud, the identities we'd uncovered, the bank accounts, the women, the child he'd abandoned. She showed him the photos, Lauren's statements, the fake charity scheme he'd used to contact Claire. Nathan stayed silent until the end. Then he smiled. "You think this ends me?" he said smoothly. "You have no idea how far ahead I am?" I leaned in. "Then you won't mind us going public." Media, federal fraud units, civil court, IRS. That wiped the smirk from his face. "You wouldn't dare?" he said. "Try me," I replied. "This time, Nathan, you conned the wrong woman and her mother." Before the officers escorted him out, he looked at Emma one last time. "You'll regret this." But she didn't. Not then. Not ever. As the doors closed behind him, Emma collapsed into a chair, trembling. I sat beside her, wrapping my arms around her. "It's not over yet," she whispered. "No," I said. "But it's finally beginning to end." 6 months later, I barely recognized the woman sitting across from me. Emma had cut her hair. Gone were the soft waves Nathan used to play with absent-mindedly, the ones he once said made her look trustworthy. In their place was a sharp, chin-length bob that made her look fierce, grounded, new. "I never realized how heavy my silence was," she said over coffee that morning. "How much I'd been carrying just to keep up the illusion of being okay." The lawsuit was ongoing. Nathan, real name still unknown, had been indicted under the name Nathan Grayson, though federal investigators now linked him to at least 5 other aliases and a multi-state identity theft ring. His legal team had tried to make deals, delay hearings, shift blame, but the evidence we provided, recordings, photographs, bank statements, testimony from Lauren and another former wife who had come forward, was airtight. He wasn't walking away this time. The news had broken nationally just a month earlier. Reporters dubbed him the husband hustler. It was sensational enough to catch attention, but complex enough that most people couldn't believe how long he'd gotten away with it. When they showed Emma's photo on TV, a shot of her walking into court with her shoulders squared like armor, I couldn't help but feel a flash of pride. Not because she looked strong, but because she finally believed she was. He stole from so many of us, Emma said, but the worst thing he took wasn't money. It was our faith in ourselves. She was right. Even I had questioned my instincts, wondered if I had pushed too hard, asked too many questions, seen ghosts where there were none. But everything I had feared had been real. And more. It wasn't just Emma who had been manipulated. I had too. His charm, his careful flattery, the way he'd called me Mom, like it was a badge of honor. I'd almost bought it. Almost. But the truth had clawed its way to the surface, as truth always does. And when it came with a fury. Emma picked up her mug and stared into the steam. Do you think he ever actually cared about any of us? I thought for a moment. I think he cared about what we could give him. Safety, status, stability. But not us. Not who we are. She nodded. That's what I'm grieving, not him, but who I thought he was. That afternoon, we visited Lauren and her son. Emma brought a gift, a hand-sewn blanket she'd made herself, something she'd started during therapy as a way to reclaim her sense of purpose. The little boy, Sam, giggled when he saw the puppy pattern, clutching it like treasure. Watching Emma with him, I saw something I hadn't seen in months. Peace. Not total, not permanent, but real. Later, as we sat on Lauren's porch and watched the sun dip behind the hills, Lauren spoke quietly. He'll be sentenced soon. Emma nodded. Yeah, I'll be there. You sure you want to see him again? Emma's jaw tightened. Yes, because this time I get to leave on my own terms. When we drove home, she reached for my hand. Thank you, she said, for not giving up on me. I squeezed her fingers. That's what mothers do. There were scars left, of course. The financial damage would take years to untangle. Emma had to rebuild her credit, find new housing, start from scratch. But she wasn't alone. She'd gone back to school to finish her design degree. She'd taken a job at a local upholstery shop, learning to rework old furniture, to strip things down and make them whole again. There was poetry in it. And for me, I'd let myself rest. I had spent so long being suspicious, vigilant, always one step ahead of disaster. Now, I was learning to exhale. The final court date came on a gray Thursday. Nathan didn't look at us, as he was led into the courtroom in shackles. The jury's verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. 15 years without parole. When they asked if the victims wanted to speak, Emma stood. Her voice didn't shake. I believed in him, she said, and when he betrayed me, I thought it meant I was broken. But I'm not. I'm stronger than he ever expected, and I'm not the one behind bars. She stepped down and never looked back. Outside the courthouse, the wind picked up. Emma tilted her face to the sky and smiled. A storm had passed, and what remained was her own.